So hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Superhuman Thinkers podcast, brought to you by the Superhuman Company. Among the many dramatic and concerning ways the COVID-19 pandemic has transformed our society and systems, impacted our health and uprooted our life, it has created a complicated set of unprecedented challenges for working parents and families. And supporting employees' health and well-being and fostering an atmosphere that supports productivity by promoting employee resiliency and a healthy corporate culture was the priority for the Dr. Anju Jain before the pandemic. And the mandate that now has become more needed and relevant than ever. And today, in this episode, I'm thrilled to welcome the Dr. Anju Jain, specialized in human development, who recently joined Fermilab after a long tenure at Caterpillar, where she previously served as the head of HR for Caterpillar India and ASEAN, focusing on optimizing workforce and organization performance in the region as well. And in addition, she's a published author of two very interesting books that I read recently: Burnout, Beat Fatigue to Thrive in the Other Work World, and Step Up, How Women Can Perform Better for Success. Welcome to the show, Anju. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks, Alan. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. And thank you so much for being with us today, because I know you are a very, very busy person. And where are you joining us from?
I'm living in a suburb of Chicago. It's called Naperville. So Naperville, Illinois is where I am sitting right now, talking to you from.
Okay, great.
And how about you, Alan? Where are you right now?
I'm located in the southeast of France, close to Italy and Switzerland, you know, and,
nice.
and the city called Lyon. And Lyon, for your knowledge, is the French capital for the French gastronomy. So you have all the chefs, all the nice food and so on. This is the city center. So it's a great place to be. So Anju, before we go any further, can you tell to our audience a little bit about yourself and your journey until now?
Sure, happy to do so. So I was born and brought up in India, New Delhi. Did my undergrad and postgrad out there. Came to US in 1990, several years ago, to do my PhD in psychology. I was in grad school for about 5 to 6 years, and I was being groomed to be a professor somewhere when I decided to try the corporate world. And I did my first internship, or my first foray into corporate, was with Kraft Foods, that was based out of New York at that time. So I took a study leave, or what we used to call independent study, took a 9 months break and went there to see what corporate life was all about and how I could apply my psychology principles to the marketing of Kraft products out there. I really enjoyed it. The reason was you had a business problem, you worked on it, and you implemented it. Versus what I was doing in academia was writing theories and hoping that they would be applied somewhere. I mean, both are great avenues, great professions, but I decided that I wanted my theoretical knowledge to be implemented sooner than later. So I decided to go to the corporate world. My first real job was with a company called Avon Products, where I was hired to study not only what our women wanted from the products, but also how can we package them, how can we appeal to their sensory expectations, you know, the touch and feel of the product, how we package them, what kind of benefits the products would give, and so forth. So there was heavy focus on research. So I was in the R&D department. Fast forwarded, I got hired into Caterpillar, which was a very different company for me. Moved due to family reasons. My spouse was at Cat while I was at Avon, so we decided whoever finds a job ends up there. I was fortunate that Caterpillar hired me at that time. So I joined Caterpillar to do market research and competitive intelligence work. So you can see psychology has tremendous applications anywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
what I was saying,
Yes, so I was in charge of putting a customer value program for Caterpillar worldwide. Fascinating experience to deal with our end user, end customer, with our dealer organization, and of course the in-house product groups to see how we could convert our at-risk customers to loyal customers, so we have a good share of their spending. I was traveling a lot in this role when I wanted to be more on the ground. Story of pretty much all women when they have two careers to take care of, family as well as professional. And my boss asked me if HR would be an area of interest, and I said, sure, let's try it out. And that was my first entry, where I was recruited by the executive office to run a diversity and inclusion initiative. This is in early 2000s I'm talking about. And that was my first exposure to HR. And from that, I continued to stay in HR, applied my marketing principles to people marketing, so to speak. And fast forwarded, I ended up in Singapore and India with Caterpillar for almost about 11 years, where I was in charge of the gamut of HR things we do. Supporting the president of Asia at that time. In 2017, I was commissioned to write a book with Penguin Random House on women leadership. That was part of my portfolio at Caterpillar as well. And I had started my own little management consulting company while with Caterpillar at that time to train middle management women in India at that time. And I found that all industries were grappling with this challenge. So it wasn't just a Caterpillar issue. And had plenty of data based on that.
What was your main challenge? What was your main challenge in Caterpillar? Because Caterpillar is more on the B2B segment, more, I would say, main segment, construction, machines, and how did you survive and thrive in Caterpillar on that extent?
How did I personally survive being a male-dominated organization?
Exactly. Yes.
Well, when you are enjoying the work you do, you don't think about all those things. Your goal is very focused. I don't think I had very many challenges, so to speak. I was fortunate that I was able to sail through, but I did see challenges for several other people in the organization. You said, right, it's construction. So how do you change the mindset of how do we attract women to this kind of an organization? And how do we change the mindsets of the male leaders, how to attract more diversity or more women to the workforce? So it involved a lot of branding. How do we make Caterpillar a welcoming, great place to work for everybody? What kind of practices and pathways can we offer to women in our organization? So we were able to do a lot of different things to attract and retain women and give them a direction to develop and grow into the organization. But it was a slow progress because any change requires tremendous effort and tremendous change management across the board. So I would say we sowed the seeds and hopefully we are reaping the benefits of those in the future. But that's, while Caterpillar was a distinct organization, pretty much all organizations in Asia were struggling with attracting women. I mean, as you know, we are able to attract women, but when it comes to middle management, women start dropping off the pipeline for familial reasons, right? So that's an area where you need to focus heavily as to what are the changes, what interventions can we make at that time so we keep women from defecting the pipeline, so to speak.
But we will, because this point is very interesting for me, and we will talk a little bit later on that topic, on how we can develop more attraction for female leadership on that extent. So I think this is very, very important. Just one question before we move on the interview. How COVID has impacted you on the family side or also on your professional side?
All right, yeah. On the familial side, there have been pluses and minuses, I would say. Everybody's at home.
Okay.
Earlier, when I was writing my books, I was the boss in the house. I had the whole house to myself.
Okay.
But with COVID, my daughters came back home. My spouse started working from home. So we had to make sure we were not walking into each other's meetings, put a structure, and everybody wanted breakfast, lunch, dinner, which was never the case before. I would manage my own meals, but with everybody, we all together had to figure out how do we build a routine or structure around. So the plus point was, you got bonus time with your family.
Correct.
And it kind of came together. Correct. Because everybody was at home. From a professional standpoint, I would say it's been a little challenging because I started my new job from home. So I didn't get to meet my team. I still haven't met them other than on Zoom.
Okay.
So that has been a little difficult for them as well as for me, I would say. A lot of Zoom meetings, that has become the norm.
Yes.
Professionally, I would say there has been a blurring of boundaries. Where is home and where is work? Sorry. It's kind of all meshed up. So you really have to think hard that this is going to be my work time.
Okay.
And I turn off my notifications and my laptop at this time.
So you need to set up like a discipline you have to set up a discipline and boundaries on that extent, correct?
Absolutely. Because when you're at home, time just goes. Your office is maybe 5 feet away from your living room or from your bedroom.
Sure.
So you want to be very cognizant, very intentional about drawing a line and setting a boundary. So I think that's something we learn over time. So that's been happening. But since I am a big proponent of well-being, and what I preach in my book is what I try to implement in my own life, how to prevent stress and burnout. So I'm practicing all the things that I talk about in my book.
Okay. And we will talk a little bit more in details because
sure.
Also my personal experience. But how do you foresee, for your perspective, both immediate and long lasting, on changing the nature of how we work today? How do you foresee that?
I think for the immediate immediate changes, I think we all have embraced working from home, that productivity can still be high, in fact, more higher than what we used to think it would be. So I think we have embraced that very quickly. Earlier, I remember before the pandemic, we used to tell our leadership in organizations that we should give more flexibility to people, allow them to telecommute. But the biggest concern would be, we can't monitor their productivity, their work, and so forth. So now the whole world has embraced that hybrid work or work from home kind of a thing, especially women, because of pandemic. A lot of responsibilities have fallen on them. I think we have witnessed that people are resilient. We have witnessed that organizations can be resilient. We can really think out of the box. So that has shown, this pandemic has shown us how to pivot quickly. We have become more open and transparent with each other. Earlier, I remember when I was in global role back in Asia, we would make sure we tell our kids, do not enter the room, we are in meetings, or don't trouble us. But now nobody cares. Kids walk in, dogs, cats, everybody walks in, you show your house, which was a no at that time. You never felt comfortable.
Correct. It's showing a new normality right now.
Correct. So there's more humaneness, right? More authenticity. So I think all those things have happened. And for organizations, it has kind of leveled the playing field.
Yeah, correct.
For everybody. Everybody has a voice on Zoom. We call out people versus in meetings, in-person meetings. That was not always the case. No, it was a little challenging. From a hiring perspective, attracting perspective, we can cast the net wide. It doesn't have to be that I have to hire somebody from Illinois per se. I can hire from California or from New York or from Asia, whatever, right? It kind of broadens that.
This gives you more perspective for talent as well. This can increase your talent pool as well and increase your opportunity as well. So
absolutely. The downside of all this is a lot of isolation, loneliness, and burnout, as you can expect, because you're cooped in your room and you're just having that fatigue, the Zoom fatigue or the video fatigue. So that has been some of the immediate, I think, impacts. Long term, I think, I hope we are able to keep some of the good things that has come out of this. Hybrid is going to be the future of work. And I think it has shown us that work is a thing we do, not necessarily a place you go to. So I think that's a big mindset shift. But along with that comes that we need to have different HR structures, pay models, and all those things. So long term, I think it's going to organically evolve and teach us, because there's not a simple playbook that we can go by. So we're writing history in a way.
Yeah. But I will talk a little bit. Let's jump to the core of our interview. I was wondering, what was at the root of your passion for the issue of burnout? Tell us, what were your main drivers to write your first book on burnout? Because I've been victim of the work also. I've done a burnout a few years ago, and it was the first book that I read personally, your book. And I learned a lot of stuff that I try to implement as well on the day-to-day, now that I'm sharing as well with other colleagues and partners. But if you can tell us, what was the main driver, or where your main drivers to write this book on burnout?
Sure. I was in Asia when I thought of this topic, and this was my second book with Penguin. So we were talking about what topic to pick as my second book, and they gave me a list of some of the items, some of the topics, and the publisher and I both picked burnout primarily because Asia is a very different place. At least, I mean, I worked in North America and I had worked in Asia, and I found Asia was the hub of burnout because people are working 24/7. You support the Asia region, you support the European region, you support the North American region. So you're pretty much on the work, on your desk 24/7. I mean, your day begins at 6 a.m. When I was in India, my day began at 6 a.m. because China was awake and Singapore was awake. As you did your meetings there, India was awake, Australia was awake. As you closed Europe and all, then North America was awake. So there were times when we were up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and not just me, but several of my colleagues were working incessantly round the clock. And we were working from home at that time because you never had time to get ready and go to office. So working from home was something we had gotten used to at that time. And I saw that a lot of people were struggling because of this 24/7 expectations. And in Asia, people have a tougher time to say no to your bosses, or to say, I need to, I'm tired, I need to take some time off. People were working on holidays, on festivals. So I think I saw all that. And in parallel, I saw people were tired, people were fatigued when they would come to meetings. They were like, oh gosh, And then I saw that students in Asia were also very, very heavily burdened with academics. And somewhere I saw a link between parents and children. If parents were the go-getters and drivers, so were the kids. And unfortunately, Asia had the highest suicide rates among the student population. So all those factors really got me interested in the subject. Being a psychologist, I was really interested in understanding this. I was once told myself by my doctor that you're heading towards a burnout. I didn't know what it was. We think stress is common. It's a price you pay to succeed. So all those variables got me interested in exploring this topic for my own understanding and to share with the world.
No, but I think you reach a level, you're totally right. You reach a level where you are in a denial mode because you want to do your work. You have some personal values as well, doing like professionalism, loyalty to the companies and so on. But you reach a moment, your body is sending you some symptoms and say, oh, you cannot continue like that anymore because we are like overeating or overwhelmed. So yes. And the level of stress nowadays are absolutely astronomical. I agree on the fact that I think HR doesn't have to convince C-suite that this is a problem. And nowadays, we foresee that there is a connection between stress and anxiety and also financial health, and dealing with stress, both general stress and financial stress, is no longer just a box you check. I think it's essential for building as well a thriving culture that is high performance. But on the other side, you need to take care of as well on the employees' well-being. And this because has an impact on the bottom line at the end. And this is it's
absolutely
sometimes we forget
absolutely about it. It's a holistic, a larger concept or a construct beyond just financial security.
And we foresee that people are dealing with so many different manifestations of stress on the individual or even on collective level. But what advice did you have on the self-care in the time of COVID so that you don't get burnout from your side, or also what you implement to your team? What you have done with them?
Sure. I think the first thing is for all of us to identify or distinguish between stress and burnout. Often we use these terms interchangeably and very loosely, but there's a difference. Stress is more transient. You have a deadline to meet, you're stressed out, you do a fine job, it's over. And stress can be positive as well, right? Because
you can have good stress
you.
And bad stress. You're correct.
Correct. Eustress and distress.
Yeah.
Burnout, on the other hand, is stress on steroids, basically. You're stressed constantly. Your fight and flight system that we are evolved with, it's constantly on. And when that's on, you have a lot of cortisol going in your body, which creates anxiety, which creates fear, which creates depression, which creates burnout. So it's very important to see if you're constantly stressed or if you're just stressed in pockets. So once you understand that, when you find that it's burnout, you want to take it seriously, because it has implications on your health, on your well-being, on your productivity, on your relationships, everything.
Right.
So I think that's the first thing to recognize, because burnout means it's a red flag. Do something now. But so that's first step. The second thing to do is, what's causing you that exponential stress? What is the key driver? Is it coming because of the work you're doing? Is it coming because of the number of hours you're putting in? Is it because of the toxic environment at your organization? What is the trigger? What is causing you incessant amount of stress?
Correct.
So before you get into self-care of doing other things, you want to eliminate that root cause or the trigger. One trigger could be telling your boss, I can't do it. Second trigger could be leave that job and find something else that is more accommodating to your personal needs as well. Because we all get stressed and inch towards burnout when we are not able to handle the plethora or the myriad of stuff we are asked to perform on, right? We have a work life, we have a home life too. When one of these start to suffer, you get stressed and anxious. So I think eliminating that trigger is very important. Now, self-care is part of maintenance. Just think about you drive a car, right? If you hear a rattling noise, you take it to the mechanic and get that fixed first. And then the mechanic tells you, you got to maintain your car. You got to do the oil change. You got to do this. You got to do that, oiling, whatever. So that's what self-care is all about. It's maintenance. It's not about fixing the problem. So in self-care, I talk about the well-being state pyramid that I mentioned in the book, which is basically about taking care of your physical self. That's very, very important. If you don't do that, the rest don't matter, right? Health is wealth. So eating right, sleeping, exercise, those are the physical pieces of self-care. Then comes the emotional well-being, and then the mental well-being. In emotional well-being, I say, spend time with family and friends. It's so important. And this pandemic has shown that loneliness is hard. In fact, one study by Sarah Pressman showed that people who are lonely, they have a 70% higher chance of, their longevity goes down 70%. So you want to make sure you're surrounded by people. With Zoom, we can have video calls like this, right? Which we never used to do. So really having those outlets, it's cathartic to connect with people. Other elements of emotional well-being could be mindfulness. That has suddenly become a big deal, right? And what is mindfulness? Just thinking about being in the moment, thinking about the present, not thinking about the past or not worrying about the future. So the mind kind of is focused on the now and not being distracted or being adulterated by other noises. Hobbies is a big deal. Being out in the nature is another way to harness your emotional well-being. All you want to do by what I mean by emotional well-being is turn on your parasympathetic nervous system. It's all related to our physiology. We want the good hormones in our body versus the cortisol hormone.
Correct.
And mental well-being, part of self-care is, making sure you have time for yourself, that you turn off your laptops, switch off so you can do something else. How do you respond efficiently to your emails? What are the times you want to look at your emails? How frequently you want to look at your phone? All those things are part of self-care. And more importantly, if you have children or if you have team members, you want to be the right role models for them.
Correct. You're
right. So if I'm using my cell phone on the dining table, dinner table, I'm telling my kids, you're not important. And hey, you also bring in yours. So we want to be very intentional about our actions. So those are a few things you want to think about taking care about self-care. And maybe I can encapsulate all this thing: be humane towards yourself, be kind, be generous, because at the end of the day, our bodies are worth millions of dollars. They are not replaceable.
No, you're right. But I've seen in Europe, or also I've been living in Asia for 10 years as well. But I've seen that still too many companies is using burnout as a proxy for dedication. And if you could get most of leaders or CEOs in the same room, what is one thing that you will tell them to start or stop doing, for example?
I think I would say to stop doing, I would say, don't kill your people. Be humane towards them. Understand that work has to be finite. It can't be infinite, right? Even if I give 24 hours on work, it's never going to be completed. It's always there. So I think the CEOs or the leadership need to drive a humane culture. Which translates into action. For example, there are several companies, especially in Europe, who had said before the pandemic, especially, that we are not going to have our servers transmit emails post 5 p.m.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So the culture translates into actions, so our leadership needs to say, okay, we are going to stop doing XYZ things so our people have time for resetting or rejuvenating themselves. Because at the end of the day, a burned out individual is not going to be as productive. So it's not a sustainable solution. So while there are short-term gains for any organization, there are no long-term gains because the productivity goes down. People become complacent. People leave the organization, and then the whole cycle of the costing comes in, because at the end of the day, the softer things is what is driving the hard numbers.
You're right.
So we have to always remember that part. What the organizations can start doing, as I said, be humane, hold people accountable. I'm not saying it's a nice place you come and go. There has to be accountability driven, but it has to be done in a humane way, in a way to know what's happening in the culture of their organization. So having that well-being strategy is very, very important.
I agree. I think you agree with me that we have been facing these unprecedented circumstances where many of us now working from home, and as well as having to oversee our kids, remote learning, and all of this burden typically falls on women. And you were discussing about that earlier stage. Exhausted, stressed, anxious, berating yourself for not doing enough. And these are all signs of burnout, as we have seen. And too many women are intimately familiar with them. But in the recent articles that I read, and maybe you have read that in the New York Times 2 months ago, women suffer 55% of the job losses, but made up of only 45% on the jobs that we're adding back in May. And I would like to know, what strategy are you hoping to offer, or you have developed during that period as a CHRO for women leadership, or for women leaders especially?
This is a very good question, Alan. I can talk about where I am right now at Fermilab, but I can also give some suggestions that I have not experimented with. Now at Fermilab, we have not seen very many women leaving us. So we have not taken any action per se, but the pandemic has given all of us the flexibility to manage our hours, right? If I have a childcare responsibility at home, I can tell my boss, these are the hours I'm going to work, and then I'm going to turn on my laptop in the night. So that flexibility is there. Now, if in a situation or in a scenario that a lot of women have exited, I would suggest we bring them back. As the pandemic goes away, as the schools open, we want to bring this population back to work. So I think we should be open-minded,
correct,
and make those calls and say, we want you back. When can you restart? That would be one part. The second part would be, as HR professionals, when we see resumes and we see a break in women's careers, especially because of pandemic or otherwise also, we should be very, very open and not hold that against them.
I agree.
The third thing I would say, a message to our male leaders, to our male spouses or spouses in general, to be very supportive, because we earlier also, a bulk of childcare or the family responsibilities fell on women's shoulders. But during the pandemic, we don't want to forget that women also need the break. So helping them at home, really supporting them and encouraging them that, hey, I can take care of X percent of our 50% of responsibilities. Why don't you look for jobs? Why don't you explore? Be really supportive and encouraging to them versus saying, you're at home, take care of everything. Exactly. So it's a whole individual, organization, and a societal.
And we have to remind we are two to make children. So it's not only women, it's also woman and male. So also each of a person has a responsibility as well. So
absolutely, it's pure math. The kids or the family is 50% of mine and 50% of my spouse's.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think what happens, why women end up leaving, is because of the pay disparity. If you look at our societal fabric, usually women marry men who are older to them, mostly in general, who are more settled in their careers perhaps and drawing more salary compared to women. So when this time for economic decisions come into play, hey, I'm bringing in more salary, so perhaps I should continue, and you are drawing less salary, so you should be the one leaving your job. It makes pure mathematical sense. Perhaps I would do the same. But at some point we want to say, you go ahead and I will take a step back, so you climb the ladder. So those conversations need to happen at home. I think if women have a vision.
And it's really important to have a change in the education, the mindset as well, because the way that our parents teach us or demonstrate, it was very traditional, but now he has changed a lot. He has evolved a lot in the society, and we need to take into consideration that.
Yes, you're so right. Change begins at home, and the society has to really reinforce and promote with the right role model. So media has a strong role to play. I mean, there's only so much we can do within our organizations.
Yes, I agree. But if it's
so
not supported,
we are seeing the symptoms.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully the new generation parents are bringing their kids in a different manner, encouraging them differently, and things like that.
Yes. Are you concerned that more women will drop out of the workforce and we may lose the progress women were making towards parity and advancement in the workplace? And what can business and society, we are talking a little bit about that, but do to make sure this is not the case? How do you foresee that?
I think the data is already showing that. The New York article you talked about is spot on. Yes, we are going to see a setback. But the onus is on us to bring them back. As we said, make those phone calls, bring those women back, offer them flexibility, and say, we want to make sure we are able to support you. So I think our earlier discussion is what I would respond to this question as well.
I agree. To come back to the burnout, I remember reading in your book, Burnout, and at that time you had already been talking on and writing about work-life integration and the importance of sleep and unplugging, and you were discussing about that. But now those challenges has been exacerbated. And what special advice do you have now for this time nowadays on disconnection and helping as well employees to be more focused on the respective task, I would say, because so many of us are having to work from homes without the clear boundary of work, home, life, I would say, and also being forced to spend so much time in front of our screen. We were talking earlier with a Zoom fatigue. This has become, unfortunately, a common word. We are airing too often this common word.
Correct. I think there are takeaways for all of us, for individuals, for leaders, for organizations as a whole. For individuals, I would say you have to have a routine created. And I'm sure a lot of people have already mastered it, given that it's all going to be soon 2 years since the pandemic started. Having a routine is very important. Lack of commute has given us some free time. So I would say a daily routine could be, you get up, you go do your exercise, you take a shower, you dress up as if you're going to work versus sitting in your pajamas, have your breakfast, do your work, do your meetings, but have a time to say, okay, this is my lunchtime, 12 to 1 or whatever. Put a hold on your calendar, block it, so no meetings trickle down during your lunchtime. And then you do your rest of the work and then say, this is going to be my end time. My last meeting is going to end at 5 o'clock. And after that, I'm not going to take any meetings. So having that kind of a routine is very important. And more importantly, in between, when you're in back-to-back meetings, see if you can take a 5-minute break. You can get up from your chair and just walk around. Several people have started turning off their cameras, but they're just on the call so they can walk and talk, so they can get some steps versus being glued, right? Earlier, when we used to go in person, we would go get a drink, go to the water fountain, go to somebody's office. So all that has gone away. We are pretty much tethered to our desk. So having those micro breaks is important. Another thing to individuals I'll say is set expectations with your teams and with your leaders that, these are my core work hours because I have responsibility at home. So there are things that as individuals, we can certainly include. Leaders need to be very aware of how much time that people are spending.
Correct.
How many meetings are there? How can we as leaders help them out? Give them the flexibility. And if you monitor, if you're seeing that some people are just putting in too many hours, have the talk with them. What are some of the things that can be taken off their plate at this time?
Agree.
Maybe that's no longer a priority, or it can be delegated somewhere. So that's very important, and be a role model. If I as a leader is responding to or holding meetings in the evening, the message I'm sending to them, you better show up.
Yeah, correct.
Correct. So as leaders, we want to avoid that. As organizations, we want to offer supportive policies. At Fermilab, I was fortunate enough to experiment with the no meeting time zones. For example, we don't have any meetings on Monday mornings and on Friday afternoon. So we can just focus on the work. So it gives you some leeway to outside of meetings all the times. So those kind of supportive policies, then talking about mindfulness, giving them access to employee assistance programs, those are some of the things we can do. And also, I think very clearly as leaders, setting up the goals and suggesting and having a discussion on what is expected out of people. So having that clarity is very important.
I agree. And do you have any special advice for women who already were feeling like they were unable to juggle their work and family responsibility before COVID amid this myth of having it all? And what would you want to say to women who now more than ever may be feeling overwhelmed or unable to do everything perfectly? What you would say to them?
I think I talk a lot about in my book called Step Up. I would say there are 3 or 4 strategies I would suggest men or women, but women in this case. I think the first strategy is to onboard yourself to what you want. Having a vision. What do I want to achieve in life? Whether it's personal or professional, it's all integrated, right? They go hand in hand. So having that vision and then making sure that we share our vision with the family, because at the end of the day, they are going to be our champions. They are the ones who are going to be supporting or not supporting us. So it's very important to share that vision and agree upon that, hey, we are in this together, and what and how it's going to be impacting us. So being very clear about what are the downsides and what are the upsides, sharing that vision, and then going forward with that. The next step, the next strategy is onboarding your organization.
Correct.
Right. So once I have the confidence that I can do it, I have my family support to help me achieve it, so we can manage our domestic career challenges. Then I go to my boss and the organization and say, this is my vision, this is what I want to achieve, how can you help me get there?
Correct.
And having those discussions, because oftentimes organizational leaders assume that I may not be interested in this marketing role or taking an expat assignment. They just assume because they see something and they perceive. That's not the case. So it's very important for us women to go out, or anybody, to say, this is what I want to do. So we lay it out. I mean, a lot of companies have career development plans, succession planning. So leverage those tools to create a path for themselves. Part of organizational support is also leveraging all the developmental opportunities that organizations offer, the trainings, the experience, the hands-on learning, on-the-job learning, and all that's very important. So once you've onboarded your organization, also, I would say the last piece is to onboard your external networks. And those could be professional and personal. And what I mean by that is asking for help is very, very important, especially for women, because they are navigating on 2 careers, not on 1.
Correct.
So whether it is utilizing daycares, whether it's utilizing aftercare, whether it's utilizing my neighbors to pitch in when I have to travel or when I'm in late meetings or whatever, really seeking help. Many times women just take the load on themselves versus spreading it out. So it's very, very important to involve your spouse, involve your children who can do the chores, the laundry, so forth, and others. In Asia, we were fortunate we could depend on parents and parents-in-laws to help. In several of my colleagues in North America, they do the same. So I think asking is very, very important for all of us. Another piece that I would say is outsource some of the things that you're doing at home. Yes, because of pandemic, we have to do everything on our own. But once the pandemic goes away, outsource some things, whether it's your lawn maintenance, whether it's, I don't know what's feasible in Europe, but in Asia and here you could outsource your cooking, you could outsource your
it's quite
mowing the yard.
Yeah, you're right. In Europe, you can do quite pretty much the same. You can outsource quite a lot of stuff.
Correct. So, and that's something, I know it costs money, so we want to go slow, but see it as an investment in your career. Correct. And in your family. So the non-value add task can go out, so you're able to spend time with family, I would say. So those are some of the things I would say: onboard yourself, onboard your family, onboard your organization, and onboard your networks.
I agree. I know you have 1 daughter and I have 2 daughters. What guidance would you want to offer to you young women today as they consider their life choices and career path? What would be your guidance?
So I have 2 daughters, Alan.
2 daughters like me. Okay.
Yes. So first and foremost, I've told them one is 19 and one is 23. For the 23, I made her read my book.
Okay.
The 19-year-old, I said, you are going to be reading this book soon. And I wanted to read about burnout as well, because kids are very high achievers these days and you don't want them to burn out. So I want them to read both the books. I think for young women, my only thing is to, again, similar, you figure out what you want to do in life. I think marriage is not the means to an end anymore. Your goal is not getting married as it used to be traditionally several years ago, but career has become if you want a career, if that's the path you want to go, give it your all, do what you want to do. So I think that's what I tell my daughters: dream big, we will support you. But you have to dream. You have to dream, you have to think how you want to do, come and talk to us, bring us on board. Wherever you're working, onboard the organization to that dream and ask for help. It's the same story.
Yeah, you're right.
Pretty much.
I think there is a lot more to discuss in that area. And before to let you go, Anju, I would like to go to a quick fire round. And I'm going to ask you 5 questions and you have no longer 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Yes, if I can hear you right.
Yeah, okay. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming who you are today?
I would say dilemma with the family.
Okay. And what was your biggest challenge?
How to integrate work and home.
Okay. And what is your favorite book? I know you love book, but what you would recommend to our audience in terms of book?
You know, the first book that I read, which I really enjoyed reading, was called The Selfish Gene.
Okay.
It was by Richard Dawkins, which basically tells that we all have a selfish gene. Anybody who on this earth, on this planet, has a selfish gene. Everybody's selfish at the end of the day. Okay. So I enjoyed reading that book.
Okay, but I did not read that one, so I will read that. What is one thing that you are excited about leadership and about your role?
To be able to develop people, to be able to make an impact.
And can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote?
I would say several years ago, one of the executive officers at Caterpillar told me that not everybody would share your passion, which means that you could be passionate about something, but doesn't mean that others would be. So if you want to realize your passion, you need to slow down and talk in their terms. So you need to bring people along to realize your passion. And that passion could be solving business problems. It could be implementing new things, anything. So if I'm passionate about burnout and well-being, I can't expect others to be, because they have something else that they are passionate about. But if I want to realize my passion, I want to bring them along with me to show them what's in for them and how we could make a larger impact. I think that was a big lesson I learned at that time.
I agree. And it's a very nice one. The last one, what would be the piece of advice for someone to be a better leader in 2021? What would be your expectation?
I think I would hold across the board, not just 2021, be humane, be kind, be generous to yourself and to the people around you. And unless you are humane towards yourself, you can't be humane towards others. Remember, when we take those flights, they always say, put your own oxygen mask first before putting on others.
Yeah, correct.
So take care of yourself first and then take care of others is what I would tell leaders. Be humane.
Thank you. And where can our audience connect with you if they want to learn more and obviously follow you? LinkedIn, social media? On LinkedIn? You're more
LinkedIn would be better. I don't have time to be active on social media anymore.
Okay.
So LinkedIn would be the right spot. I would be happy to connect with people at professional level, personal level, whatever they want to talk to me. I would be more than happy to learn and share from them.
But thanks again. I really appreciate for taking your time to join us and share your experience, because I really, really appreciate and we have seen that creating high performance remote work culture is not easy nowadays, and organizations that commit doing with the proper foundation, with the well-being and procedures can reap exponential benefits, and you are a source of inspiration on that extent. And for everyone listening, thank you for your question. I will forward all to Anju so she can reply to you back on LinkedIn. And thanks to everyone following this episode brought to you by the Superhuman Company. I hope you enjoy it, and please like, share, comments, tags as well. And if you don't really follow us, make sure you hit the button on my profile, but you will be notified whenever we go live or we post new content, or you can also subscribe to the Superhuman Thinkers podcast or any platform. We are everywhere. So apart from that, Dr. Anju Jain, CHRO of Fermilab. Anju, thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much for your time. And I wish you enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to doing this again soon. And thank you for taking care, and have a fabulous rest of the week ahead.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Look forward to more interactions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.